Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Engaging in SEL Through Visual Arts. My name is Amanda Rothengast, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we introduce our speaker, I would like to let you know a bit more about our webinars. Both Inspire and Harmony host these webinars where thought leaders and educators share best practices and tools to support social emotional learning. These presentations are the opinions and content of our guest speakers and may not necessarily be a direct representation of Harmony or Inspire. For best viewing of this webinar, it is recommended that you shut down all other browsers. Also, if you have questions for our speaker, feel free to use your question box on your GoToWebinar panel. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and you'll receive a copy of the slide deck and recording within the next week. If you're watching this webinar live, you'll receive a copy of the certificate of completion from GoToWebinar within 24 hours. Also, today you can download a copy of the slide deck and some recommended resources from our presenter today on your handout tab on your GoToWebinar panel. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker. Jonathan Juravich is the 2018 Ohio Teacher of the Year and was one of the 4 finalists for 2018 National Teacher of the Year. Mr. Juravich, known as Mr. J, is the art educator at Liberty Tree Elementary School in Powell, Ohio. A leader in the Ohio Art Education Association, Mr. J also mentors future art educators at Otterbein University as an adjunct instructor. Mr. J's personal and professional focus is on the importance of social emotional learning in our daily lives. This is the topic of his many presentations, his TED Talk, How Do We Teach Empathy, and the all-new Drawing with Mr. J digital series. Please join me in welcoming Jonathan Juravich.
Hey everybody, I'm really excited to be here with you today. And I and want to tell you a little bit more about myself, even though thank you, Amanda, for that introduction. And at my school, at Liberty Tree Elementary School, I am the visual art teacher, but I also have this really unique role that my principal created that I oversee building culture and environment. And this is a position, it's a supplemental position that I do on top of my teaching, along with our school counselor, Heather Byerly. And in that role, we oversee many of the things that happen within our school, activities, events, a committee, and something that we really love doing, which is making sure that social emotional learning is at the forefront of so many of the discussions that we have at our school. So that's a little bit about me, and I would love to know a little bit more about you. So we do have a poll question that's going to pop up for you just to give us a little bit more information about your teaching context or your educational context. So let's roll that poll.
Great, so on your screen, you should see the question. What is your current role? K-8 classroom teacher, high school teacher, visual arts specialist teacher, or after school provider or other? Go ahead and click right on your screen. We'll give you a few minutes to respond. The responses are coming in. If you have any trouble, you can type your response in the question box, but it looks like everybody is completing the answers on the poll.
I like watching the numbers go up and down, honestly. It's really interesting.
Yes, we have about 70% who voted. We'll give you all about another minute to select your response. Great, looks like most of you have voted. You want to launch the results for us? All right, as you can see, it looks like we have a mixed group today. We have some classroom teachers, high school teachers. We do have those specialist teachers. We have some after school providers, and we have some in the other category. And folks, if you're in the other category, you can type in the question box, what is your role? And when we get to another break here, I can share out. But you can see we have a great audience today that's anxious to hear about building SEL in the arts curriculum.
And I am always fascinated by that other category too. I'm like, tell me more. So yeah, please do share it within that question box about who you are and your role. All right, so let me share with you our objectives for this afternoon. So let's discuss how visual art experiences can prompt important SEL discussions. And the flip of that, how SEL can lead to rich art making experiences for students. And then also visual art experiences can lead to community building. And that's something that is kind of the cornerstone of a lot of the work that I do within my school. And almost more importantly, I can't draw is not the answer. Now, I did see that we have several art educators who are on this webinar with us, but it is really important to point out that like you don't have to know how to draw well to be able to foster these visual art experiences for students. So what I want you to do right this second is grab something to draw with and something to draw on, just a scrap piece of paper, a pencil or a pen, okay? Because we're gonna do a quick little drawing lesson that I do with kindergarten. So don't worry, we all got this together, all right? So some of us draw stick people, right? Little happy stick people. And well, I hear this a lot that it's like, I can't even draw a stick person. And typically my response is always like, well, you can draw a stick person, but you shouldn't draw a stick person. Because we should all have like higher expectations for ourselves, right? Saying I can't to our students, instead of doing that, we should be able to show them that we too can learn and grow. So we're gonna draw a person together using simple shapes, all right? And I'll go pretty slowly, but let's start with the head. It's a circle, right? So start with a circle. Now, immediately someone's like, well, actually our head's an oval. Don't worry about it. We were drawing stick people. Let's focus on the circle, okay? So then the body is a simple rectangle. And immediately when I show this to someone, they go, what about the neck? And I go, okay, again, we were drawing some stick people. So I think that we're good with the body as this rectangle, right? All right, we're gonna use a whole lot of rectangles. So we've got legs that are like skinny little rectangles that come down from the body. And then the arms are also skinny little rectangles that are kind of sticking straight out. So yeah, this person clearly wants a hug, right? And then hands and feet. Like, okay, if you're feeling confident and want to go for it and draw all those little fingers and toes or detailed little shoes, that is on you, do it. But you can also just draw little circles or little bumps for hands and feet. Okay, so we see our person kind of coming together, right? And then right now, this person's not really showing us any emotions or feelings or who they are. So you can always draw on a simple little face. My person's very excited and happy, right? But this could be anybody. So let's add the details that make this person a unique individual. So maybe that's adding hair. Clearly the one in the left-hand corner is a little bit of me, right? You could add hair. You could add on a skirt. You could add on shoes, making those details that make this person who they are. I hope that's what you're doing right now. But this is just a simple way to, I don't know, think higher about ourselves, about what we're capable of, and then also for our students as well. And I hope that after today, you take a lot out of our discussions, but I also hope that whenever you get off this webinar, that you go teach someone else how to draw a person, right? Maybe it's over dinner tonight or talking with a friend or with students in your class tomorrow. Have that opportunity to be like, look what I learned, how to draw a person. So thank you for doing that with me. Now, what I want to ask you right now is, how are you feeling, right? Like, how are you feeling really? And this is something you can put into the question box. One simple word. How are you feeling? I know that the friendly people at Starbucks ask me that every morning, and sometimes I don't even have an answer that early in the morning, but go ahead, in the question box, tell us how you are feeling.
And while we're waiting for some responses, I wanted to let you know more about our audience. We have several school counselors, we have several student teachers, and we have several Harmony ambassadors on the call with us today. So very excited to have the diverse audience. We are starting to get some responses how people are feeling. Good, but tired, happy, fatigued, stressed, overwhelmed. Great. We have a great coming through. Tired, peaceful, okay, anxious, hopeful but excited, tired, sad, overwhelmed, a little stressed, wonderful. Pretty good considering all the changes to teaching and learning this year. Feeling excited, feeling friendly and tired. A lot of tired today.
Yes. Isn't it interesting?
Optimistic.
Oh.
Yep,
Ooh.
that was a great one to end on there, optimistic.
Isn't it interesting how we're all coming to just this one webinar with all of those different feelings? And then it just makes me think about the students that come in the room, that how often am I actually thinking about all of the feelings that they're experiencing and really taking a moment to ask them about it. I mean, we ask each other all the time, how are you feeling or how are you doing? And everyone's like, great, great, fine. Fine is like seems to be the new answer that I hear a lot. Fine, everything's fine. But really, we should be able to engage in these conversations. I am a huge fan of Mark Brackett and his work, and he is an amazing educator, really, psychologist from Yale, and does this work with mood meters. And this isn't necessarily his mood meter. This is a version of his work. You should check out his website, his book, Permission to Feel. But with these mood meters, something that we did at our school is we talked about, like, how could we use these? And one thing that we talked about was, well, we could give them to students. We could print them off. And then as students are experiencing through their day, you could do a check-in. Ask them, how are you feeling? And have them find themselves within that mood meter. Are they feeling low? Are they in that blue region where they're using less energy? Or are they up in that yellowy region up in the corner where they're feeling a lot more energy and more, leaning more towards positive feelings? So could they find themselves within that mood meter? During professional development activities, we've passed these out to teachers. I have with my art educator colleagues, and throughout the professional day, we have them track where they are, how they are feeling, and then what do they need to do to change maybe how they're feeling or to support how they're feeling. So I definitely would check out Mark's work. But in doing this mood meter, it got me to think a lot about how kids respond, because they normally respond with the happy, sad, grumpy, sleepy kind of, emotions whenever you ask them how they're feeling. But there are so many more emotions that they're experiencing and feeling. And so what we did is I brought all my students into the room in first grade, and I had them join me on the carpet, and we started brainstorming every emotion that they could think of. And of course, they started off with like the happy and the sad. And then, of course, there was Bennett, who said flabbergasted, right? This little first grader. And I said, Bennett, now that you said flabbergasted, you now have to explain to everyone else in the room what flabbergasted means. And he did. But from that moment, we did a couple art lessons geared towards exploring those emotions. The first one we did is we did these simple clay slab faces where kids rolled out clay into kind of almost like a plate form. And then they built up a nose. I love these long noses, but use simple clay building techniques to show emotions. And it's clear, very clear on here with the colors they chose, the facial expressions they made, what these faces are feeling and experiencing. We looked at artwork from Picasso, and we talked about some of his simple plate techniques and what he did. And these were done by first graders. They're super simple, but it led us through this great discussion of emotions. Now, from that point, we started to talk about ourselves and how we go through many emotions and feelings in one day, sometimes from minute to minute, right? And so we talked about those photo strips that the kids, a lot of kids are now experiencing at weddings or events, going into the photo booth. And what I had them do is create 4 self-portraits using pencil. This is skinny Sharpie. These are done by first graders. And they sat there and drew themselves experiencing 4 different emotions and feelings. And I love these because they speak so highly of the books that the kids are reading and experiencing, the movies, the shows. I mean, if you look over on the left-hand side with the kid with the smoke coming out of his ears, I mean, it's crazy awesome, right? With those eyebrows. Something I want to point out is that the one on the far right was done by a student that moved to our school from Japan, and English was a very new to her, very new to her. And this was her first day in art class. And these were the emotions that she brought out to say that these feelings are universal and how we're experiencing them. So these self-portraits gave this experience for us to explore all the different emotions that we're feeling, because yes, even though mom, grandma, Uncle Joe want to display our happy, smiley self-portrait, we are humans that explore and experience all of these emotions at once. Now, a practice that I do within my classroom is something called the Quick Draw Challenge. And the Quick Draw Challenge is something where there is a posted statement, such as this one: draw an incredible birdhouse. And as the students come into my classroom, they read that, and then they sit down at their seats and they draw for 2 minutes about what this post is, or what this prompt is. And after the 2 minutes, they turn it in, and then we get going with the rest of our day. And it's sometimes a way for me to have 2 minutes to myself, but also a way for them to get their creative minds going and get prepared for our art class that day. And they just do it with pencil. They look like sticky notes, but that's because I took colored paper and cut them down to the size of sticky notes, and then we've taped them to the wall. This year's a little bit different because of some of the restrictions and changes that we're doing, but I'm still having kids do quick draw challenges, but with a twist. Instead, what I've started doing is referring to these conversation cards from Sanford Harmony. If you could give a gift to anyone in the world, who would it be, and what would you give him or her? So using these cards now as a prompt, one of the cards that I read and turned into a prompt for today for my students was, if you could have any animal in the world as a pet, what would it be? And of course, in those 2 minutes, they're drawing with pencil on these little pieces of paper, but they're not also just sitting there quietly. I'm learning about the kids and their favorite animals. I'm learning about the kids, and some of them just really want a cat, and mom said they can't have a cat. That was an interesting discussion with a kindergartner today. So using these resources to prompt some of these great discussions, as well as some of these like drawing and creative experiences. So from this quick draw challenge practice that I do, I actually started on a new project, and that is Drawing with Mr. J. This is a web-based series done by our local PBS affiliate here in Columbus, Ohio, and it was all started because of these quick draws. And what they are is they are completely free at wosu.org/Mr. J. There's about 8 episodes up there now, and each episode starts with a really goofy drawing prompt. One of them is a fruit dance party, or a dragon breathing something other than fire. And as the kids draw along with me on the screen, I begin talking to them about their experiences, their emotions, their feelings. And at the very end of the episode, which again is only 3.5 minutes long, it's really short. But at the end, I always try to prompt them to say, use this drawing as a means to start a conversation with a parent or trusted adult. And so through this drawing experience, not only are we having fun, we're being goofy with it, but I'm also giving kids an opportunity to explore those emotions through their drawing. So I hope you do check out Drawing with Mr. J on the website. Not only are the episodes there, as well as some 2 videos, one for kids and one for adults, that talk about the program and what we're doing with it, the goals of it. But there are also companion guides for each episode that kind of talk you through some discussion prompts to have in class after maybe you've viewed it in class. There are also books and literacy resources. There are other activities, so that each episode is not just a standalone 3.5 minutes, but it's really part of a much broader discussion about the emotions and feelings that these students are experiencing. What was really interesting is we launched this late or early winter of 2020, and then you know, our country went very much into quarantine as COVID-19 hit the country. And I started to hear from classroom teachers and art teachers from across the country that started using Drawing with Mr. J as some touch points with students within their digital platforms, as well as assigning them to students as assignments. I got to actually be a part of a Flipgrid where I started to see a school in New Jersey and Delaware, how they were beginning to use these drawings as well for discussions. A huge part of my work with Drawing with Mr. J and also in my classroom all comes back to this idea of awareness, having an awareness. In our school a couple years ago, we sat down and actually we're really intentional about defining what awareness means whenever we have these conversations with our students about awareness of self and awareness of others. And the definition that we came up with is the ability to notice what is happening in and around you so that you can make a choice, right? And I love that last part, so that you can make a choice. It's not just noticing something's happening or noticing that you're having these emotions, but it's that next step. What are you going to do once you have that noticing and that awareness? And as Amanda shared at the beginning of this webinar, I have given a TED Talk. It's called How Do You Teach Empathy? And within that TED Talk, the cornerstone of the conversation is built on having a sense of awareness of ourselves and a sense of awareness of others, because once we do, then we can have an empathetic response. So I hope you check it out. You could Google Jonathan Juravich TED Talk, and it'll pop up, as well as in the handout section of this GoToWebinar, there is a resource page, and I've included the link on there as well as the link to Drawing with Mr. J. But in that TED Talk, I talk about an experience that my fourth graders actually led me through. This is a really beautiful, fun little house, right? It's actually not little, it's about 5 feet tall. And we made it after a discussion of architecture in my fourth grade classrooms. We were talking about architecture, and then Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. And it profoundly impacted my students because they were having an awareness that this was going on, that this was happening. They were hearing things on the news, on TV, their parents were talking about it, but no one was like talking with the students about it. So they came into my art room, we were talking about architecture, and it led into this really beautiful conversation about how natural disasters, about how things in our life impact architecture, but more importantly, are impacting the people in their lives there. And so what those fourth grade students decided to do is we built this house out of like styrofoam insulation foam that you can get from the hardware store. It's one of my favorite materials to use because you can cut it and mold it, and it looks really super sturdy, but it's super lightweight. And then we started covering it with polka dots. Now, why polka dots? We were talking about 2 artists that cover items, rooms, people, all with polka dots. And it's a way of connecting people, connecting experiences, and the playfulness of this simple dot. See, one dot by itself is just a dot, right? But all of these dots together create this experience and this visual. Now, if you look at the roof, every single one of those paper dots represents an art supply that my fourth grade students collected and then donated to a school in Houston. And this was profound for my students because they were beginning to realize that all of the things that they loved about our art room were about the materials, the experiences they could have. And instead of collecting money or food, which seems to be like our natural like go-to, they collected these art supplies and we sent them off to Houston for those students. And it began this little connection with students that were just like them, fourth graders just like them. And I discussed this in that TED Talk. And I do have to tell you that this is like the pop-up video version of the TED Talk now, I guess. In the front row that day in New York City was the Chancellor of New York City Schools. He was in the front row because he was going to give a TED Talk that afternoon. And I could see that while I was explaining this, it was kind of moving him. And after I was done with my talk, you know, I was trying to relax. And then he came up to me and he said, "Thank you." And I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, I'm looking forward to your talk as well." And he's like, "Well, no, I actually was the superintendent of schools in Houston during Hurricane Harvey. And thank you so much for, you know, sparking this awareness of your students and then helping them act upon it." And I didn't know what to do. So I panicked. I said, can we take a selfie together? So we did. And then I went and cried in the corner. So when you watch that now, and I'm sweating profusely throughout the TED Talk, you'll know that little bit, right? So learning from our students and their awareness, it's also really important that we have an awareness of our students. And I love this tool from understood.org. Understood is an organization that works with teachers and parents to support students that learn and think differently. And I love these sentence starters. The whole point is that whenever we're beginning to be confused about a situation with a student, or in my case, I have used these when I begin to feel heated and frustrated with a student and something that's happening in my room, and I don't understand the why, these sentence starters really help pull you back and to begin thinking about that why and asking the student. So gathering information. Could you tell me a little bit more, right? Can you tell me what you need right now? Clarifying understanding, modeling listening, and then affirming their feelings. I can tell you that I used this last year with a student that I was getting incredibly frustrated with because of their lack of effort within my art room. And I used these sentence starters with a one-on-one conversation with the student, and it made a world of difference for both of us. I understood better what he needed me to do, some modifications of ways that I was sharing information. As well, he knew that I wanted to help him, that I wanted to be there with him alongside him. And I will tell you that I don't want to say that immediately it was like that movie moment where we high five and everything's better and he's making great strides. But, a year later, he still smiles at me in a way that I know that simple conversation I had with him really made a difference. So I would check out understood.org and all of their great resources, but especially these sentence starters. And again, this is also available on that resource list as well. So having a sense of awareness of who we are as individuals is kind of the cornerstone of this amazing project that I tell everyone I know about. It is Why You Matter. And this project comes from Chelsea, Michigan, and some amazing art educators there at their high school. I heard about this at the National Art Education Association conference and immediately started texting my school counselor from the presentation. I was like, I know what we need to do. So the premise of this work happened because of high suicide rates and attempted suicides that were happening within their school district. And the teachers wanting to do something to help their students. And I mean, even that, right? Even as I say it, that is overwhelming. But what these teachers did is they began this program called Why You Matter. And the whole point was to begin conversations with students, staff members, everybody within their school community about the fact that they matter. They matter to the school community, they matter to their families, they matter to the broader community, and they matter to our world. And if we have no other conversations with our students, that conversation is important and valid and needs to be happening. And so what they did is after these discussions with their students, they had them fill out graphic organizers, write personal narratives, and then simplify their statements down to one simple statement. Then they had everyone in the school take a photograph of themselves holding a small dry erase board with their statement on it. And yeah, then they were photographed. And again, every student, staff member, everybody within that building. Then they had to double, triple, quadruple check that they had everyone accounted for and then displayed them throughout the school building. I mean, it is so important that you have everyone accounted for, because if you're doing this whole project saying that we all matter and you forget, or someone's left off, or something happens to that print and doesn't get hung up, I mean, that could be catastrophic, right? And so they shared about this experience in year one and have continued to do other projects thereafter. Well, from this experience, I think that I tell everyone I know about it. And I've been really excited to see other schools then take this and make it their own. At our school, we did something similar. We wrote a grant, and then our school counselor and librarian actually led students through discussions about why you matter. And in these cases, I tell funny jokes, or I can't see very many colors. I have a different perspective. I absolutely love that because that's such a unique way of viewing like color blindness, right? Or our kindergarten teachers who said, I'm compassionate and give good hugs. And she is, right? And so students were led through graphic organizers. They filled out and came down to one statement, and then they were all photographed holding these dry erase boards. Same thing, double, triple, quadruple checked that we had everyone photographed, that when we printed them, that we checked off that we had everybody. And then what we did is we mixed all of these images up. They weren't sorted by kindergarten or by staff member, and then we hung them throughout the school. We hung them all at the same eye level on both sides of the hallways, so that as you walked through the hallways, you saw all of these amazing faces and the incredibly thoughtful statements that they were making. And again, they weren't like all kindergartens in one hallway. The principal wasn't displayed at the front of the building. Everybody was mixed up to show that we are all important in the story of our school building. And then we had a community night where it wasn't a fundraiser. There wasn't anything for sale. There wasn't like inflatables. It was really coming to view this work and to invite families and community members in. And I remember one dad who came up to me and said, well, I was planning on finding my kid's artwork, and then we were going to go to like her soccer like practice. And I was like, okay. And he's like, we've been here an hour and a half because I love this. And that meant so much that someone took the time to read every single one of these statements as they went through the building. What we did do is invite families to bring in a meal with them and sit in our cafeteria and enjoy a meal together. Because we know that so often when we have these evening events, I mean, right now, evening events are very different or non-existent. But in the looking future-wise, whenever we have these evening events, families are often coming to and from and going to somewhere else. And it can be really challenging to sit down and enjoy a meal together. So giving them that space and that time to do so was really cool. And seeing what families brought from home, as well as what families were able to pick up on their way there. Now, from this, again, many different schools have done this work, and sometimes it's not even led by the art educator. Sometimes it's led by the school librarian or the school counselor or a high school teacher that just really wants to do this work. So I do want you to check out the Why You Matter website. It's incredible. There's great resources and lesson plans there as well. Now, where do you take this though, right? Because there are so many other ideas that could stem from this. And I want to share with you the work of students from a teacher in Minnesota, Laura Hensley, and there's her social media handles. And with her students, after seeing this Why You Matter campaign, she actually had her art students begin creating images of people in their lives that they needed to take a moment and say, you matter. Okay, are you following that? Right, so they had to think of someone in their life that they're like, you matter to me, and then create a portrait of them. And it can be done in any medium. She shared all kinds of images with me where they painted on, like someone painted on the keys from a computer keyboard. Some of the people did photographs, some people did drawings. The one on the left here with the blue face, that is all made out of yarn. Now you're looking at it different, aren't you? It's all glued down pieces of yarn of this individual. And think about what that means whenever you give someone a piece of artwork. I mean, it's profound, right? Whenever you're gifting somebody some work that you made and you say, you matter to me, that means a lot. I know of an art teacher, her name is Dawn Norris, and she's remarkable. And she always does the sweetest small things. And she actually had these little business cards made up that said, you matter. And I remember at a conference, she slid one across the table to me, and I kept it, and I still have it. Because for her to make that move to say, you matter in such a small, simple way. So right now, think about a way that in big, in small ways, how can you share with someone in your life, you matter to me? So in what big and small ways can you share with someone in your life, you matter to me? So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to keep sharing some examples of some things that we've done in our school that I've done with my own work as an artist and an art educator. But think about this question, and if you can, please share your thoughts just off the top of your head under that question box in the GoToWebinar panel, so that then in a couple slides, I'm going to have Amanda share out some of the ideas that you're coming up with or the things that you're thinking of. So I took Laura's idea, and once we went into quarantine in the winter, I began thinking about the people that I was missing, and I was really missing my students in those interactions, but I was also really missing the adults that I worked with. And so what I started to do was kind of a little social media campaign where I started painting little simple portraits on school days when I would have seen them of the different teachers within the building. And I would always do the hashtag like teachers I am missing. And then it was administrators that I'm missing, support staff that I'm missing. And I would create these little simple portraits. They're about 4 inches by 4 inches. And I would post them on social media telling a simple story about that educator that like I know from my personal experiences with them or conversations we would have, so that people saw these teachers as these remarkable humans that they were. I still have these and I want to give them to all the teachers, but there are 3 people in our building that I have still not painted. And again, kind of like that Why You Matter project, I would feel terrible if I, handed them all out to everybody in the building and didn't have those 3 people painted as well. So soon, they should be getting them soon. But this small act of sharing on social media, I know in Ohio, our Ohio Department of Education has a hashtag Ohio Loves Teachers, which is a way for people within the community to share about the great things that teachers are doing. So that might even be something that you look into in your state or your area about what other simple recognition ways are people doing these things on social media. During the month of November, we do this little kind of campaign project throughout our building that's the I Am Thankful for You. And it's something super simple. I don't know if in your communities you do that booing thing around Halloween where a family will like put treats on your doorstep and then ring the doorbell and run away, and then you have to do that to 2 other houses and then 2 other houses. Well, we used to do that in our school, and then we got away from that and did this I Am Thankful for You note. So the idea is that you take this simple little template that says I am thankful for you, and I typically start it and I will write to 2 people about something that I am thankful for them for, and I will hang them on their doors. And then the next morning when they get there, they'll see them and write 2 notes to 2 other teachers, to 2 other staff members, and then they'll write them to 2 other staff members. And slowly and surely throughout the month of November, everyone gets this note of thanks on their door. And it's so simple. It's a piece of cardstock. And sometimes people attach little pieces of candy or a little gift with it, but sometimes it's just the note. And I do have to tell you that there were 2 teachers in our building, one that had them from 2 years hung up over her desk because that meant so much to her that someone took the time to write the note that they wrote. And she wanted to remember that on those hard days and to see that note hung up over her desk. And there was one other teacher I know of that took and framed the I'm thankful for you note because it meant so much to them. There is another school district that I spoke with where they started doing this from in their advisory periods in their middle school, where the kids started writing thankfulness notes to one another in the different advisory periods and then posting them on each other's doors. So another twist on that possibility. Now, this is something that we did this year. My principal always has a theme or a quote that we have for each school year. And this year she said, focus on today to prepare for tomorrow. Now, this is hand lettered by one of our intervention specialists within our school and not by me. And I think that's really important. Sometimes as the art teacher, I feel like I have to do all the creative things, but there are creative people within our building with skills that should be encouraged, right, and fostered. And so Stacy Swan is that person who created this hand lettering. And then her and I made photocopies on cardstock. This is rather small, kind of the size of an index card. And then we attached little pieces of wood strip from that I cut on my chop saw, and we hot glued them on there. And then a piece of little twine at the top, just to make it feel special. And then we put them in everyone's mailboxes so that they could have this as a reminder in their classrooms that yes, there are so many things that we are worried about for the future, so many things we're confused about, but that if we focus on today, on the right now, that we can better prepare for what's going to happen tomorrow. And I love coming into my room every morning and seeing that little note and thinking about the fact that, again, this was done together, Stacy and I, to be able to share with people throughout our building. So right now, Amanda, do we have any answers or from?
Yes, we
Yeah.
have some coming through. Telling someone you see them and or hear them. Send a note through the mail. Call and invite the person to share about themselves and what's happening without sharing your own personal stories. Just listen and affirm. Leave a note of thanks or a small gift, but don't reveal who left it. Leave your daughter a tiny note in her lunchbox every day. Email your child's teacher and tell them you think they're doing a great job.
Well, and I think that one, what I'm trying really hard to do right now is that when I get home from school and I ask my daughter about her day, like I try then to send an email to her teacher, whether it be her art teacher, her classroom teacher, PE teacher, to just say like, this is something my daughter told me about today and that she really loved, and thank you for that. Because think about how much that impacts you maybe as an educator when someone else does that. The other thing that I've tried to do really intentionally is when someone pops into my brain for some reason and if I have their phone number, I send them a quick text. Just a simple text to say, I'm thinking about you right now. Hope you're doing great. How are things going, right? Because I think so many times people's come through our brains and then they, move out of our initial thoughts and then we move on through our day. But think about what it would mean to us if we got a text message from someone in that way. This is something that I did for Educators Rising. Educators Rising is a group of educators who want, or high school students that want to become future educators. And in Ohio, they had their state conference at Ohio Dominican, which is a university. And Ohio Dominican's mascot is, I can't remember, like a panther or a mountain lion. I think it's a panther. It's a giant cat. All right, let's go with it being a giant cat. So what I did is I made up all these little cats, and then all of these future educators, and again, they were future art educators or preschool teachers, future high school English teachers, right? They all, whoever attended my session, they wrote little affirmation statements, statements of hope on these little panthers. They decorated them, and then they cut them out, and they took and hid them throughout the university's campus as a way for the college students to find whenever they returned from spring break, as just these simple little, surprises. Like imagine if you're going about your day and you look down into the potted plant and you see grow through what you go through. I mean, it's also hilarious because it was in the potted plant, but attaching them to bulletin boards, someone hid it behind the giant map on one of those classroom boards. So doing something like this within the mascot of your own building, your own educational context could be something really simple and meaningful to do as well. I visited a school 2 years ago where they have like a house system where their kids from multiple grade levels attend time together, they learn together, and they also at this building really focus on certain words of honesty, respect, empathy. And so what we did is we made these houses representing each of these groups of students, and we also put the words on them once they were done. This is made out of that styrofoam insulation foam again. The students wrote little notes about what it means to show empathy or what it means to show respect. They attached them with Mod Podge. Then they covered the surface with tissue paper and Mod Podge. I mean, that Mod Podge smell was strong. But in the end, they had these bright, beautiful houses that what the Unified Arts team did in that building is they ended up using these houses as a means of celebrating classrooms that were showing empathy to other kids, showing respect to other kids in their classroom, and saying that, like, Mrs. Miller's class has done an amazing job of showing respect over the past week. And so they would put that house out in front of their classroom, and they would continually move throughout the school. It's just a really interesting way for them to engage in these discussions about showing and discussing what do these behaviors look like. And sometimes it's in really super, super small ways. So I had a student, oh my goodness, 9 years ago. His name was Jack. And every day he'd come to art class and I would see him look super defeated. And I'd be like, what is going on here? And finally, one day I looked at him and I was like, what is going on? And he's like, well, I wore plaid to match you. And I was like, what? Well, what I didn't realize is that, well, you can't see me because I'm doing this webinar, but I'm a rather short guy and I can buy my clothes from the Target Kids department. And Jack and I had the same exact plaid shirt from the Target Kids department. And all he wanted to do was make a connection with me. And so he wanted to match me. So I had no idea. So I started wearing the plaid shirt on his art day. Well, what started happening is other kids started wearing their plaid shirts on their art day and their art day. And I went home one night and I said, well, I guess this is it. So for 9 years, every day, I wear plaid. It doesn't matter if it's the summer, the winter, a Saturday, every day I wear plaid because it's a simple, small way that my students connect with me. It's a simple, small thing that they remember about me. I have high school kids that their parents will send me their senior pictures and they're wearing plaid and they'll say like, thinking of you on the back of the senior picture. I mean, something so small that changed in my life. And it's something that people notice about me after meeting me or seeing me for a couple times, but there is a real reason why. It's this simple, small way to connect. A girl that is new to our school, that moved to our school during this moment, she wore plaid today. And she actually said to me when she walked in the door, she was a fourth grader, she said, I wore plaid to match you. And so it's still happening. It's still a part of, who I am and what I do. But I want to tell you about one student specifically, and that is McKenna. McKenna came to our school in kindergarten because we opened a specialized learning center for students with autism. And McKenna could get the support she needed at our school instead of the other school within our district at that time. And immediately, this kindergartner had me wrapped around her finger, right? Like, I was in. She was funny, she was creative, she was smart, and I was in. Now, in the third grade, I met and talked with her teacher within the Specialized Learning Center, and I said, I want to nominate McKenna for Gifted in the Visual Arts. And we helped her fill out the application, we helped her with her portfolio, and she was identified. So she became twice exceptional, a student with autism who was gifted in the visual arts. And she came to me and she said, what do I get for this? And I said, well, what do you mean, McKenna? She said, do I get free food? And I was like, well, no, this isn't like bringing your report card to like Wendy's, right? Like you don't get like free food. And she's like, okay. She's like, do I get paid? I said, no, you don't really get paid. I'm going to provide you with resources. I'm going to challenge you. She said, you already do that. And I said, okay, well, I do. You're right. So I started thinking about what could I do for McKenna? What could I do for students like McKenna, these amazing individuals? And so around that time is when I was named Ohio's Teacher of the Year in 2018 and began doing a lot more speaking engagements. And so what I decided to do was talk to McKenna about illustrating my PowerPoints and my presentations. And she did. And so all of the images that you've seen throughout this PowerPoint were all illustrated by McKenna. She's now a middle schooler, but many of these images were drawn when she was in the 4th and 5th grade. And still, whenever I need an image, I will ask her or reach out to her mom and say, do you think McKenna could draw this for me? And she does. And occasionally we meet at her favorite restaurant, McDonald's. And so I guess in the end, she did get that free food that she wanted, right? But this is something so small that I decided to do that made a huge impact for McKenna, for her to be self-aware of this gift that she has, for her gift of illustration, but also humor, and to celebrate who she is as an individual. So it's really important for us to think about those individual students within our classes and what we can do for them. So after all of this, you've been listening to me ramble on for 50 minutes. The idea here is like, now what do you do with this? And also this image is so much better now that you know McKenna's story, right? That this was done by a 4th grader at the time. So what are you gonna do? So what is one way you plan on integrating SEL into visual arts learning? Or I guess also the flip. How do you want to integrate visual arts learning into social emotional learning? Now, this is something that you could put in the question box as well. If you have something right now where you're like, yes, I love that idea you did, or that's something that I'm going to think about, or what you said sparked something, you could fill that out in the question box as well. As we go through and kind of do a couple Q&As here at the end.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jonathan. This was so inspirational. Loved hearing all your stories, and I'll continue to check in the question box here as ideas come up, but just reminding us the importance of being human, and especially now with all that we're going through. Just so many great ideas we heard today. We did have a couple questions that came through the question box. One good question that came through: what sort of visual examples do you show your students for facial expressions?
Good, right? Okay, well, now that you see my face too, sometimes what we do whenever we do visual expressions, especially with first grade, is I actually have them make those expressions on their faces along with me. So what you couldn't see during this whole webinar is my crazy eyebrows bouncing up and down or the faces that I make, but I actually have kids do those expressions along with me. And then sometimes very quickly on my smartboard or on a whiteboard, I will draw like, okay, so what did the eyes do here? Or what would the eyebrows do here? So it's more in the moment instead of like handing them like a packet or a resource. Sometimes that's because I don't know what emotions each first grade class is going to come up with. But once we've done that, we refer to it all the time. And I continue to refer to it throughout their grade levels. But I think it really helps having them act out those emotions. And you as the teacher, of course, it's entertaining, but you also get to see like their grasp of what do these feelings look like? What do these feelings feel like on their faces as they do this, right? So.
Excellent. We had another question. What do you do with students who refuse to draw? Do you offer them other options?
What's really interesting is, I can't stand when teachers do this, but I don't I don't deal with that very often. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that we explore all kinds of artistic styles so that the kids they feel very comfortable with drawing how they feel comfortable drawing. I think the quick draw has also really helped because I think from the beginning I said there is no right or wrong. Some of you aren't even going to finish this. It's only 2 minutes. For some of you, 2 minutes is going to feel like an eternity. And for some of you, it's going to feel like a second. And so I think it's just that encouragement. I think that a lot of that comes from them feeling safe and secure within my room to make mistakes, to be challenged, to ask questions whenever they have them. And then also around 4th or 5th grade is typically whenever students begin questioning or seeing that someone else draws better than them, right? So in 4th and 5th grade, I begin to explore a lot of unexpected materials or using a traditional material in a very unexpected way, or exploring outsider artists who do artwork that is not like your polished museum work that so many of the kids think is acceptable art. That is a very roundabout answer, but hopefully you got something out of that.
Yes, yes. We have other questions coming up, but I encourage you all to reach out to Jonathan. His contact information and his handles are here because we are almost out of time. But I really appreciate everyone sharing their ideas. Many shared they are going to use the conversation starter cards from Harmony. They're going to use the mood meter. Others say they're just taking notes. They're going to watch this webinar again when they get the webinar. They loved all the ideas you shared. So thank you so much. We learned so much today and we're truly inspired.
Thank you, everybody.
So I wanted to share quickly some additional resources that we have at Sanford Programs. If you're not aware, we offer free resources to support SEL and particularly tools to build empathy, the point that Jonathan shared of importance today. We invite you to register for free at sanfordinspire.org and check out our 60-minute module teaching students empathy to learn tips and strategies. Once you register for Inspire, you are also registered for Harmony, and that's where you'll find the quick connection cards that Jonathan referenced today. And we also just launched the Harmony Distance Learning Guide that will help educators establish a virtual environment to support SEL and Harmony. This guide is full of tips and strategies so educators can implement the everyday practices of Harmony's goals, Meet Up, Buddy Up, and Harmony lessons and activities in a virtual or a classroom setting. We've emphasized the importance of feelings and check-ins during Meetup and provided several activities for helping students understand and regulate their emotions as well as their peers. And we know you'll love the 10-day planners to help veteran and new teachers implement Harmony. You'll find a step-by-step planner to introduce each of these everyday practices in the first Harmony unit. So we encourage you to explore our free resources. We are here to support you. And with that, we want to thank you all for joining this webinar today and taking time out of your busy schedules to learn more about engaging in SEL through the arts. Jonathan, do you have any final words for our audience?
Yeah, I am just very grateful that you joined us on this webinar, and that I'm thankful to Sanford, Harmony, and Inspire for engaging us all in this work, and thank you for the opportunity from National University System. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And you will all receive a copy of the recording within a week. I know several were asking in the question box about that, so you will receive it and you can share with your colleagues as well. And we hope you will join us for next month for our webinar on such an important topic impacting so many of us in these challenging times, the neuroscience of stress, presented by Dr. Carrion, the lead researcher at Stanford, and Chi Kim, the CEO of Pure Edge and the Castle board member. You can register today on our website. Once this webinar comes to a close, a survey will launch on your screen. It's very short, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback. We do read your feedback and take your responses seriously. To this day, your responses have helped us build more successful webinars. Thank you to everyone for joining, and stay safe. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.